Call to order this P&Z meeting, Monday, October the 7th, 2024 at 6:30. We have a roll call and we've got a quorum. So introduction and agenda format of hearing.
Good evening, everyone. For each item, we will have a call to order followed by a staff report and an applicant presentation. The public comment window will be opened to share support or opposition. Please state your name and address for the record and keep your comments brief within a 3-minute window. Afterwards, the commission will discuss and the commission will take a vote. The vote will be to recommend approval as presented, represent approval with conditions, or denial of the request. And on to the order of the agenda. Tonight on the consent agenda, we have approval of the meeting minutes from the September 16th, 2024 meeting. And on new business tonight, we have a replat of Welcome Kirby and consideration and possible action of proposed amendments to the UDC pertaining to the tree preservation ordinance. Thank you, Chair. I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, that brings us to the consent agenda. Can I have a motion and a second for approval of the minutes?
So moved.
Commissioner Henrik, second.
Chair, before you get to seconding that, please note on the screen, even though we had a withdrawal by the applicant, it is still on the item B is still on the agenda. Okay. So when considering the consent agenda, if you could consider just item A instead of both item A and B, basically leaving item B as unmoved.
Do we need to make a motion to remove that from the consent agenda?
I was going to say, it was kind of weird the way that it happened because the chair actually said approval of the minutes, which I think he meant to say was approval of the consent agenda item A and only A. Yeah. And I'm taking the so moved, which I forgot who said that. Commissioner Eccles.
Oh,
okay. Commissioner Eccles made the original motion and Commissioner Hendricks seconded that. So item B was not presented with the way that you actually stated it. So I think that you had removed it from the agenda.
So we're good? All right, any discussion? Seeing none, I'll show by raising your right hand. Passes 5-0. That moves it on to new business. Consideration of possible action, Plat 24-70, replat of Welcome Kirby. Request by Daniel Massiatte, applicant on behalf of Welcome Land Development, LLC, owner for approval of a replat of Welcome Kirby to combine a parcel of land to a platted lot, creating one lot on 22.69 acres of land located at northwest corner of Frug Road and Kirby Drive, east of Hopper Road, Pearland, Texas. Can I have a motion and a second for approval?
Motion to approve.
Commissioner Henrik, second.
All right, I turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Chair. Florence Buaku is here to provide the staff report.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. As presented earlier, this is a replat of Welcome Kirby creating one lot, and the intent is to add a small lot in the southwest corner of the property to the already platted lot. The property has multiple zoning designations. It's mostly zoned planned development. It's part of the LNRPD. And then it also has a little bit of Spectrum District 4 to the north and Spectrum District 3 to the southwest corner. So on your screen is the proposed plat, and the shaded area is the parcel of land that is being added to the originally platted property. Staff has reviewed this replat based on the criteria established in the Unified Development Code. And the Unified Development Code requires that a replat meets the requirements of a final plat. And so the criteria you have on your screen is for final plat approval, and the plat meets all the requirements. And as such, staff is recommending approval of the proposed replat. Thank you, and that concludes staff report.
Okay, I don't see an applicant present. I don't see any people wishing to speak for or against it. So do I just need to make a second call on it? Okay, a second call for anyone wishing to speak for or against it. Third and final call for anyone wishing to speak for or against it. Seeing none, that opens it up for staff discussion. So, I mean, not staff, I'm sorry, commission discussion. Anybody? Okay, seeing none, a call for the vote. All those in favor, sign by raising your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Passes 5-0. Okay, that brings us to consideration and possible action proposed amendment to the Unified Development Code pertaining tree preservation ordinance public hearing. Does staff want to take this?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's our presentation to give.
Oops. I think the first question is whether there's a motion and a second, and then after we get that motion and a second, because we need direction from the Planning and Zoning Commission, there will be an amendment to fill in the blanks, so to speak.
Okay. And I have a motion and a second.
Commissioner Haskins, motion to approve.
Commissioner Ordinance, second.
Cool. All right, thank you. So just want to give a brief overview of some discussion points that we previously had at the last meeting there in September 16th. One of the things that we did some additional research on was that inch for inch discussion point, but realizing that we have a previous legal ad out there that pertained to these 6 or 7 items to amend. We didn't want to pull the rug out, so to speak, and change that legal ad or have to go back and change the legal ad in order to get the inch for inch in. So what you're seeing and voting on tonight is strictly what was discussed from the previous summaries. There was some addition. Again, these were the 6 items that are looking at being amended. Really and truly, all of y'all had consensus on, so much so to say that y'all wanted to put this on consent agenda. But we do have that last item on the tree mitigation fee cap that we are looking for just some additional discussion and direction on, whether it be option A, option B, or something else. But this is pretty much the exact same information that was provided to y'all last time, just now in a form where we can have a recommendation provided from y'all. And that recommendation will follow up to the City Council next week at their regular meeting. With that, I will pass back to you.
Anybody?
This Commissioner Hendricks, on number 6, the tree mitigation fee cap, are there some examples again that you can show? Because I feel like that cap fee is kind of high.
So previously, we had discussed how that valuation came from, how and where that valuation came from. And Commissioner Hendricks, I don't remember if you were here for that discussion.
I was here. I just was looking to see if we had some example of a business, a recent business of some sort. I can't remember if we had some examples of that, what that would cost. I feel like y'all might have, but I don't remember.
Good evening, everybody. It's Vance. I don't recall if we had specific examples apart from just showing, you know, if BCAD showed the property's value being at X, 90% of that would be Y, and then how the current calculation would compare to it, and then the valuation when it comes to the development would just be based off project's cost. Like I'm sure you've seen many development fees calculated that way. They come in and it's 3% or 5% or whatever it is of just valuation provided by the builder. I don't remember if we had specific examples.
Okay.
If I recall, there was some discussion on how some of these values were obtained and or justified, or some stopgaps in place to verify. I'm sorry, it's been a month, but the tax value on option A would be from the latest approved, said and done, argued, whatever you want to call it, like the last official value of the property, correct? You know, because everyone gets to argue their tax value. But after hearings are said and done, and it is what it is, that's the value we're getting, not a mid-year, not a, or an appraised value if they choose to submit one, right? Something to that effect.
Yeah, and no, great point. And I appreciate you bringing that back up, Commissioner Haskins. Just, it will be something we'll need direction from y'all and council on. You know, working in the customer service industry, I can wholeheartedly say that, hey, we need an appraisal so that we can determine this fee is pretty unreasonable. But at the same time, I think there is, again, I think we said this last time, some acceptance that BCAD's number will be a little bit lagging, just in the sense of, and a little bit lagging. I know of a very real example that millions of dollars difference, and that will be just something we have to overcome through this.
And then for option B, I think it was brought up, I don't know who brought it up, but the question of how are we getting the development's valuation? You know, if it's provided by the developer, oh no, it's only worth $1, I swear.
Taking them at their
yeah,
word.
you know, how, was there any sort of questioning how we might go about a process of validating that? You know, how is somebody's gas station worth this or that, or whatever it may be? I mean, I know the city develops its own properties, but at the same time, we're not in the development business. So just, I remember those being questions that we, albeit we may have liked the percentages and how they were developed, it was, okay, well, what's the stopgap to make those good numbers that we can rely on, I think was really the only issue.
I'm still, this is Commissioner Eccles, I'm still having a hard time understanding why you want to raise the tree mitigation fee from 200 to 300. What do you do with this money? Are the city is going to be putting the trees up and maintaining the trees, making sure they're trimmed, making sure if we get a storm, they're cleared where they won't end up on the roadway? My thing is if somebody owns a piece of property for the city to come in and say, well, if you're going to build and you're going to take a tree down that they may have planted 20 years ago when they needed shade for some reason, and now today they don't need the shade, they need it for parking. You're going, something they own, something they planted, you want to put a $300 mitigation fee on a tree that's their life expectancy. If it's a water oak, 25 to 30 years. If it's a oak tree, it may have a 100-year life or may not, because trees get disease. And I understand we have a mitigation free will, if you will, if the tree has disease, but you're wanting these owners of these trees to pay you money for taking a tree down that they own. And I have a problem as a P&Z commissioner to say that's the right thing to do, to charge a fee to someone that is wanting to build a house on a piece of property that they planted years ago when it fit the lot, but now the tree is overgrown, it's too big. Now they want to cut it down and they want to redevelop the land and put another house. And we're saying, oh, you're going to have to pay the city this, or you're going to have to mitigate it with putting other trees. Commercial, I don't mind having commercial pay, either put trees in, let the city forester, let them work with the developer on where to put the trees. If you've got a piece of land, I'm looking out the window now, with probably 100 trees. If somebody wanted to develop that land across the street, you're wanting to tell me you're going to mitigate them a fee of over $200,000, cut those trees down to build something that we don't own, the city doesn't own, but you want to collect a fee? I'm having heartburn with that. And if you could help me understand that, that would be a benefit for me and give me directions on how to vote.
Yeah. So thank you, Commissioner Eccles, for those comments. My mind goes instantly to the green infrastructure that we have. Our trees have been established since 1997, that they have a value in our community. I believe we can reflect back on some of our previous council members or council meetings where a discussion, I think it's off 35, occurred, and there was some significant trees removed, and it evidently caused an uproar that got the tree ordinance put into place. And that was essentially our community's way of saying trees are important here and they're a community asset, and if you're going to remove them, we want to encourage you to, when you do development, to do so in a way that's mindful of our existing canopy, and B, if you're unable to maintain trees on your site, they are important here. And so that's where the fee in lieu comes in for those developments that cannot either preserve or plant on site. And so that's what the fee is. They're going from $200 to $300, so this fee has not changed since 1997. As we can all agree and accept, changes in costs since 1997 are not anywhere near what they used to be. And so when it comes to dissuading people from paying the fee and just stroking the check, as the language has been used to date, that's where raising the fee is. But the ordinance itself, almost 30 years ago, our community established that trees are important here and that a mitigation program is appropriate for us. And that's how, and it's still here today, and that's what we're voting on, is just trying to right size it for where we are today.
Well, could it not be when they put in their site development, when the urban forester approves a site development, that he can make sure that they can mitigate the amount of trees somewhat? I know it's not going to be inch for inch, because you get a 100-year tree and you want to put a mitigation. So what are they going to do? Put in 20 5-inch trees?
Right. Mr. Eccles, I apologize, and I don't want to interrupt on Vance, but I just want to make sure that I'm understanding where the concern is. Are you concerned that a homeowner has to pay the tree mitigation, or that a property owner has to pay the tree mitigation?
What I'm concerned about right now is property owner, developer. What's going to happen 5-10 years ago? This board changes, the council changes, the staff change, and now they want to say to the homesteader, we're going to control your lot as well.
And that's why I wanted to ask, because again, you used the word homesteader, but you said property owner earlier. And that's why I'm asking for the distinction. Because we have an exemption for tree mitigation if you own a lot and you have a residence on it. So those people don't have to pay the tree mitigation. However, if it's a vacant lot, if there's not development, or if it's a business and there's an existing building for that business on it, then the tree mitigation applies. So for me,
I totally understand.
Okay, so it's not a homesteader, and that's why I'm saying that.
I'm not talking about the homesteader, because quite frankly, when you open up a door and you get your foot in, what happens that I've seen in the past many times, once that door's open, there's continually pushback, 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 pushback. And what starts out small, maybe insignificant, becomes big. I mean, you have a development just north of us, just on the corner. They had to pay a handsome amount for tree mitigation. Plus, in their urban development, in their site plan with the urban forester, they put in trees to mitigate some of the cost. But if we're having insurmountable amount of monies that we're charging, and what then, once the city collects, where is the city planning on putting those trees? Because the city now will own those trees. On what city property will they put trees? Because the city won't put trees on private property, only on public.
Yeah, great question. And so the trees that our urban forestry program plants are on public property, like you mentioned, and they're located throughout the parks or in the right-of-ways. And so, like, if certain trees die or need to be replaced, we'll help contribute to some of that, depending on what caused it. We may not, just as far as like if a vehicle hits a tree, usually that's a different process. But we plan around our different parks and green spaces, our nature center, and then also there are some larger projects that are in the hundreds of thousands that urban forestry has slated. There's a walking trail behind, I can't think of that park, behind the splash pad off of, what is the name of that park? Centennial. So there's like a walking trail back in there. There's actually like the ability to purchase land with the trees, tree trust funds. So there's some larger things going on with it. But happy to answer as many questions, but at the same time, I do kind of want to call attention that questioning the tree trust or the tree preservation's ordinance existence hasn't been the discussion. Right now, it really is within the confines of these amendments in front of us. And to your point about the cost, that's where I think the cap came in place. I think there's been some similar conversations from the city council and staff and developers about the cap being an option, and that's where we're just providing those to the taxable value or the project's cost.
Thank you.
The city. Sorry, Commissioner Orno, is there a goal that we're wanting to meet, a canopy goal, like a percentage that we're looking to obtain?
There is, I cannot think of the national program. It's like 20 or 21%.
Yeah, so, I would go back to I think it was 2 or 3 conversations ago where we kind of talked about the biomes and, the Pearland is largely within coastal prairie, and the typical coastal prairie sits in between the 15 to 25% range. So having a 20% mark, which is roughly the national average, let's say full east to west coast, at 20% is about where I think our program is aimed to get us towards.
On where it falls with the other cities. I know I was looking at one of the graphs that y'all had, and we fell pretty much, I think there was maybe 1 or 2 other cities that fell below us as far as our tree mitigation and stuff is concerned. What options did the majority of them use as far as, did they use the same type of criteria that we're proposing here? Especially on the options that 95% and 10% development.
Commissioner Eisenberg, if I could just circle back to Commissioner Ordinance' question. So I found it from a previous memo. So the U.S. Forestry Service says that for our areas, like Martin mentioned, grasslands areas, it should be about 20%. Yeah. And then to your question, I don't believe we found a single city in the state of Texas that had a cap. The cap we found was actually in another state in I want to say like the Mideast.
City of Alvin has a cap, and it's per acre.
Per acre?
It's per acre. I can look it up.
Anybody else?
It would probably take me a bit to look it up, but I know that they do.
Tommy? You got any more?
And so, if I may, Commissioner, I think the amount paid to the tree trust fund shall, and this is Alvin's, I apologize, shall be applied at a maximum of $2,500 per acre within a maximum total payment of $100,000 per development.
That's it.
So it's $2,500 per acre with a maximum of $100,000 per development.
Okay, item 6, number 2, the option B, fee will not exceed 10% of the development's evaluation. You have someone come develop several acres, and they're putting 10 million valuation. So you're saying that 10%, they could be charged for mitigation of up to $1 million?
So yeah, it's just a math problem. Whatever the valuation is, and just to talk to the example that's often used here at the corner with this school, it was a $21 million project. They paid $200,000 in preservation and never said a word to anybody. That project's consistently quoted, and it's just interesting to me that we use these certain projects that have never showed up to this podium, never complained a bit, but they're often quoted because of that number. And I say that with that tone simply because I'm encouraging us not to give away our value. You can see how full the seats are tonight with people wanting to talk out. It's our second public hearing. This conversation's been going on for over a year. And then so, again, I just don't want us to give away value that people are willing to pay to make our community nice and ensure we have a nice, healthy canopy.
Anybody?
I have another question. So back on number 6, option number 2, the option B, did we decide or did we come to a conclusion on how we are going to get that valuation? Are we going to let the developer tell us what they think it is, or are we going to have someone come out there and go through that process?
So in the development process, it's very common for us just to take what the developers tell us. I mean, there's a variety of our fees. Our commercial permitting valuation fees are based off of what developers tell us. And within, to Commissioner Haskins' example, within it coming in and just saying $10 or something like that, it really goes unquestioned. People often give a number that's in the real world, $3 million project, $10 million project, and that goes unquestioned.
Okay.
But yeah, for the most part, that is an honor-based system. And also, I think just to clarify for the commission, those percentages are for y'all to make a recommendation on. This is just staff tabling it. If y'all want to make recommendations or edit them, you're welcome to vocalize that, and we'll take that recommendation to council.
One more question. Is there a way that y'all came up with these numbers? Like, what was the method behind the madness that made you come up with these numbers? Is it based off something that y'all seen other cities are doing, or I'm just curious?
So for the valuation based off the price of the land, that I believe that was the example we found in the Mideast, was like 90% of the cost of the land. And then for the valuation based off of the project's cost, I looked at kind of our existing fees that we've taken over the 19 or the 30-ish years, and the high end was the 10%.
Thank you.
Well, with this recommendation of 10% on total project, could we change that to 1%? I mean, if as you just said, there's $21 million project, and they paid $200,000 for tree mitigation. That will make a difference whether or not somebody comes in and develops here or not. I mean, if you're wanting to put these astronomical fees on, I think we need to mitigate the amount of the fees as well. I mean,
If I may, I'm gonna ask that question in a different way, which actually answers a couple of things. I know we said last time that this money goes towards our tree fund to plant and decorate and do other things throughout the city that the city maintains. Great, awesome, no problem. To his point, other than maintenance and putting new greenery in the ground for our facilities, is there a specific putback level that we're trying to meet? Kind of toward his question and where I'm going with this, I'll land this plane. So if we're charging 10%, right, and that's on the basis of, well, it usually costs X to plant a tree of so and such size at one of our facilities, and so we're kind of looking at a tree for tree type of cost. I'm not saying inch for inch. I'm just saying something like that, and that's where we could maybe adjust that percentage to look at. Does that make sense? Because if we're strictly just going at, oh, we're planting, baby trees, saplings, if you will, and maintenance of our facilities, and that's will a 1 or a 2% maintain that? Or no, we're looking to get some bigger trees when we build a fire station or we build a community center. We're looking to get a few bigger trees with some upfront stuff in addition to maintenance. So, because I'm happy with 10, I'm happy with 5. I just kind of wanted to know what was our goal. What's the goal of our of that group, that endeavor that may facilitate either one of those, 95% tax value, 10% of either one, right? Are we looking to maintain up here, or are we looking to maintain here, somewhere in the middle?
I would say the maintain is at the lower end, simply because the lots we have left to develop are some of the lots we have left to develop are so heavily wooded, the ability to replace those will really not be possible with the available vacant land. And so this really is kind of a maintenance effort, if you will, just to keep our canopy semi-competitive with the level it's at now. But the truth is, as we continue to approach and get to build out, I mean, our canopy is going to diminish some. And that's, one of the reasons that this is such an important ordinance and important vote is just what we're doing will influence what Pearland's built out environment looks like. And so, and I think as we would all agree, once it's done, there's no going back, or it would be just very difficult. But no, I would definitely say it's going to be these fees, and to your point about the money, so far the money's been used very sparingly, and that's why there is about $1 million in the tree trust fund, because it hasn't really done anything really large. It's planted and given away thousands and thousands of trees, but that's really relatively affordable. But the goal would certainly be to maintain and just kind of minimize the reduction.
This is Commissioner Eccles. If it will, I would like to make a motion on item 6, number 2, option B, to change the amount from 10% to 1%.
Commissioner Eccles, I think it's a little bit premature yet, and I apologize if I've misunderstood the intent. But I have not heard a consensus of P&Z say that they wanted to go to option B. So until we get to option B, I don't think that you amend the percentage. I may have misunderstood that, though. I say that because I think that at least 2 people were considering something similar to what the Alvin cap is, which would have been in option C. So making a motion to amend B if the P&Z is looking to recommend something closer to what Alvin had would be premature at this time. I don't want to take the motion away from you. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding.
Okay, I thought that this this staff recommendation was already in motion to accept it in a second, and now we're in discussions of this particular.
Yes, sir, we are in discussion. There is a motion and a second to approve staff recommendations 1 through 6. However, before the commission can do that, it needs to decide on number 6 what cap, if any, is applicable. At the moment, I've not heard a consensus of P&Z saying which or what option they would like. I've heard discussion about A, B, and a third potential C. Plus, I think I've heard, well, I'm going to say a D because I think you also had a different original thing. I'd have to go back and look at Jennifer's notes to confirm what it was. But I think that before you go to amend option B, we need to know if that's the type of cap that the P&Z is looking to do.
I mean, do we have to recommend either one of these?
No, sir, you don't have to recommend a cap at all, or you can recommend a different cap. I'm going to call it a choose your own adventure, and we're here for your ride. So if what you're saying, though, is that you move that you want option B and that you want option B to be at I'm sorry, what was the cap? 1% cap?
1%.
A 1% cap. If that's what your motion is, to go for B and for B to be a 1% cap, then that is a perfectly fine motion and you can make that now.
And that was the motion I made.
Okay, I apologize. I thought I didn't realize that you're saying I want B and B to be, I have to think about that for a minute, and for B to be reduced down to a 1%.
That is correct.
So there is a motion. That's what Commissioner Eccles' motion is, to select option B and amend option B to a 1% cap. So we would need a second on that. Chair, it would be up to you to give as much time or discussion as you want, or to say that the motion failed for lack of second.
Second. Well, you want to second it? Is what you said?
No, I have a question about.
Can we, if he doesn't get a second, can we wait? Can he make another amendment later on it?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I will pull my motion.
Okay.
Okay, I'd like to talk through option A. So in my mind, I'm just going to share my thoughts. I like option A better than B. Because I just don't know how comfortable, I understand that the process is that we take them at their evaluation. I just don't know how I am with that. That's all. But I like A, but I feel like we need to clarify A a little bit more. We talked about when the county sends out their report. So, I mean, if we go with option A and we like it or we want to tweak it, we have to decide. Like, we can't go with the first evaluation that comes out because we have to give people the opportunity and time to go in and protest that. And they have, I think, until June 1st or somewhere around then to protest. And then after June, kind of the month of June and July is when they're going in and they're actually having all these hearings. So I personally like option A, but I do think at some point we need to put a date on it, or August, or I don't know. I think somehow we need to narrow that down. Or if I'm overthinking it, just tell me, because I can do that all the time.
So we would go by the most recently approved tax roll. So that might,
Define
it's
that.
gonna be
Define that for me.
it's going to be a year behind. It's going to be a lag.
Perfect. That's
Is what ends up happening. So
that works for me.
if you wanted, and if the person who was on that most recently approved tax sale is not the person in front of us today, meaning the property changed hands, you could always ask for verification of the,
That's just another conversation at that time. Yeah.
so you could ask, you could, instead of it being the tax value, you could say, or if whatever period of time, because I think the new values are due in July, so if it's after July, you could say if that person's different than the person whose name is on the account, proof of sale and the purchase price. And then you would actually know what the purchase price is. A lot of people aren't super comfortable doing that, but normally your purchase price is still, if at that point you've changed values, the person who bought the land is now coming in and developing it, and they know that their development value is going to be a lot higher than even their purchase price.
Sure.
And one way around both option A and option B is to say that you like both of them and to go for the higher of option A or option B.
Well, that didn't cross my mind.
And what I would be comfortable with is an option A, option B, and an option C. And the wording to be the fee will not exceed, I'm not comfortable with 95% of the tax value. Then you're 100% of what they purchased property for. They're going to have a tree mitigation for that. They just doubled their cost of doing business. I would be okay with fee not to exceed X amount, not 95, of tax appraisal, or 1% of the development valuation, with the caveat of C being none of these fees would exceed $100,000. And that way you have a hard cap, and then you have two other options to discuss on what would be a fair and reasonable amount to mitigate. My thing is if we make this tree mitigation too high, you're not going to have people coming in and wanting to develop business here in Pearland. Because people, if they want to come to Pearland, and they will come to Pearland unless the fees just make it not affordable. Because people don't want to come open business only to be shut down and go bankrupt because of exorbitant amount of fees. So if we could do something that tag teams or builds dovetails upon option A, option B, and option C, I personally like that option of what Alvin does, 100% max. So I'm in favor of not looking at option A, not looking at option B, or not looking at an option C, but looking at these are the fees and how they will be mitigated upon versus tax amount, the development amount, and these fees will not exceed $100,000 or whatever this commission it can be agreeable to take to the council. I would be okay with that, but to put in there, I mean, quite frankly, somebody buy a piece of property on 518 and they want to develop an acre of property. An acre of property is sold by square foot. It may be worth $2 million. So you're telling me the tree mitigation is going to be 95% of the $2 million? That's what I'm having heartburn with.
So I just want to kind of rephrase some of the dialogue that's been going on. This tree mitigation fee only comes in to play if there's trees that have to be mitigated for. 2, if they have not utilized all of the credits that this is providing, so the upsizing of trees, the mitigation of protecting trees on site, those things that they as property owner and as site planners are making decisions based off of their economics on whether or not they can accommodate those existing trees on site, which oftentimes they can. Oftentimes they design around and utilize the existing landscaping to then get credit for and reduce their tree mitigation fee. So by further reducing, that potential, I completely understand. We don't want to make business unfeasible in Pearland. And I think for over 20 years, we've not been unfeasible. But with that, the mitigation only comes into play and the fee only comes into play once they've exhausted their other opportunities.
Thank you, Martin, for providing that. I think that's very good to kind of refocus for a moment as we find ourselves in the dialogue. And to his point about the properties that this does impact, so this is an ordinance been in place since 1997. We're in our slowest development period just as far as Pearland's boom from 97, the early 2000s to now. We do about 15,000 permits a year. Our slow part is about 15,000 permits a year. Total projects that have paid into the tree trust is under 30. So since 1997, the very moment that we're sitting here, all the development that Pearland has seen, less than 30 projects have paid into the tree trust account.
Ms. Commissioner Hendricks, I don't know if this is the time to make a recommendation, but on the tree mitigation cap, I'd personally feel better with having option A and B, but A would be 20% of the site's tax value and option B, 2% of the development's valuation.
And if you had an A and AB,
Whatever is lower,
whichever is lower.
lowest.
Can I ask a question about number 3? Can you just tell me exactly what that means? I'm not making it up in my head.
So previously we had a credit in there that said you can upsize a tree. And if the minimum tree planting is a 2-inch tree, and if you are planting a 4-inch tree, then you get 2 inches of credit. Now we are adding in that credit schedule. So a 2-inch tree gets you an additional inch of credit. And that credit was capped at 25%. Now the cap is at 100%. So in theory, you could upsize so many trees to reduce that tree mitigation fee or number of inches that need to be mitigated for down to nothing.
So that's a huge benefit for them.
The first 5 solutions here are an enormous benefit to any land developer. And I again, Vance has said it, and I'm going to echo what he said. Let's not give away our value. Let's not create credits and create exceptions, but then also cap our value so low that we no longer can keep the tree mitigation or the tree protection program up, that we no longer can do the projects that this city deserves. Otherwise, those come out of general fund dollars.
And tax increase.
The last time, didn't we, I think you used an example of a current cost of a development and then applying, I think, one of these or both of them to see how it related to what they just paid for the development and what they would, and it was marginal or not a very big increase with implementing these as written, if I'm not mistaken, and it wasn't that much of a, I mean, to the point where we only had how many paid into the tree fund in so many years. It wasn't that big of a deal. Like it would hinder development, I think is what I saw or what I remember. I personally like A because it establishes, or it uses something that is known, albeit it might be late. We can ask for current appraisal. We can get the sell value if it's changed hands. There's something tangible there that we can research and look at versus a development value, which is subjective to whomever's, accountant.
I like A and B. I don't have a problem with the percentages. I think we have the option to maybe add in or whichever is less.
I think the top percentage is the 95% is crazy high.
I just don't know what to compare it with, to be honest. There's no way for me to know if it's high or not.
Vance,
again,
did I
it's-
understand you a while ago when you said just
Yeah, there it is.
taking the school into consideration? It was a $21 million project. Did you say that they paid $210,000 or $200,000? That's 1% basically.
And the 95% or the 10%, either one, is after all of their credits. It's after. So I don't think that it's too high, because they get to apply all of the credits and then they're hit with what's ever left, or the other way around. They establish a number, then you subtract all your credits. Okay, yeah, 6 and 1 half done. But it's after the fact.
Right. So just to reiterate, tree mitigation is based off of the trees that are removed. Each of those trees currently has a multiplier that is derived from the inch of the tree that's being removed. That gets you a total amount of inches. You then have the ability to upsize trees. You have the ability to preserve trees, and that both of those take away your total number of inches that you're required to mitigate for. That mitigation either gets replanted on site or you pay the mitigation fee.
I'm good with this. I would like to establish the rules on how we obtain the value, the tax value. If it's a year lag, like you said, if it's changed hands, we get to see the bill of sale, or the city has the option to order an appraisal.
And you could do it just to make sure we're all, so just like other amendments have been suggested, you could do latest approved tax roll or latest bill of sale. I mean, we could write in ors.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't want the city to pay for appraisal. That's too much.
Thank you for finding that. I appreciate it.
All right, question. If we're looking at option A, and let's say someone recently bought the property, so there's a new owner. I mean, we can ask them for their closing disclosure, but that does not show the appraised value. So would we add to this that we would like to see their current appraisal that they received in order to get that loan to buy the property, or what are we gonna go by? Because the CD doesn't show the appraisal.
Yes, so I would just say that asking for those documentations or from a governmental entity, people are gonna feel as though that's intrusive. We can put it in there. I don't know what to expect from that. We have development fees that are based on percentages and expectant costs. People provide that, and I think it's higher than what people think. People are pretty honest about, well, I don't know how honest they are about that, but the number is always higher than what the tax value is. Maybe I should say it that, or the appraised value is, or at least in the reports that I've seen. I don't deal with that on a daily basis, though. So yes, we can ask for it if that's what City Council ultimately lands on, and you can make that recommendation tonight if that's what P&Z is for. I think that you can always ask for it and build it in there, and if they want to take advantage of that cap, it's worth letting us look at their documents.
Well, all we're doing is really making a recommendation to City Council. City Council is the one that's going to ultimately make the decision on that.
Here, I think that there are 5 of you here, and I think I've heard 9 recommendations. So
Yeah, I know.
I have one question just to clarify this. And Martin, if you would, if said property in Pearland, Texas, developer wanted to come in, it had a 30-inch oak tree. How many trees would they have to plant to mitigate the entire amount of the mitigation fees on that property of an acre of property? They're putting a 800 or 8,000 square foot building and parking for 30 cars. How many trees, and do they have room to plant
So
the trees on a 30-inch?
let's work out the math. So a 30-inch tree lands in between 24 and 36 inches. So that 30-inch tree is multiplied at three times. So it would be 90 inches of trees that they would have to mitigate for. That 90 inches can be divided by 2 to get 45 2-inch trees. It can be divided by 3 to get 33-inch trees, or it can be divided by 4 to get 23 4-inch trees.
On that acre of land, would it be possible for them to put 22 trees with 8,000 square foot building and parking for 20 cars? I mean, that's the crux of the matter that I see we're being faced with. Is are we over-regulating an impossibility for someone to be able to get the credits? And what would their mitigation fee is? Say if they could only put 5 trees into the parking lot or around the building.
Mhm. So let's say, I'll have some back of the napkin math here. So you've got that 90 inches at 5 4-inch trees. That gets you 25 inches of mitigation that you are receiving. So 90 minus 25 gives you 65 inches left that you are mitigating for.
So that would be the 65 times 300 for one tree.
If you were not able to replant more on site. And again, that is a designer's choice based off of either not being able to save and preserve other trees that would further reduce the ability for that number of inches to be reduced, or to design around where those parking spaces are being installed.
All right, does anybody want to make any motions to the amendments, or? Let's call for a vote and send this on to city council. Okay. You gotta
Commissioner
make an
Orno?
amendment to the motion.
No.
He withdrew his, but we've got a motion now. We've got to have an amendment to
In
this.
order to proceed, we need to fill in a blank, so to speak, for number 6.
Number 6.
We don't know how to make that recommendation yet. The recommendation could be to just not include the cap at all. I mean, that's y'all's choice. The motion could be to remove number 6 and caps completely, if y'all didn't want to include that on it. Or it could be any of the options, and I think we've heard so many of them tonight, I can't repeat them all because I'd never heard at least 3 people saying anything for one of them.
Commissioner Henricks, let's just add an option C, where I think it was 20% of the site tax value, or the lower of the two, 20% of the site tax value, or 2% of the, what was the second one? Development's valuation.
I heard a motion,
Is it-
and it was going to be essentially option A at 20%, with option B at 2%, and then the lower of the two, which is what makes this option C. Am I?
Correct, yes.
And then just because I had a moment of confusion, I just want to, so C would replace A and B, and P and Z's recommendation, once Commissioner Hendricks has a second, would be to take 20% or 2%, whichever is lower. And then Commissioner Eccles, I believe you second that. Now, Chair, back to you.
Okay, now, we've got to vote on this,
Yes, you have to vote on whether or not to make the amendment.
make the amendment for this, and then we'll vote on the motion.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any discussion on this? See it?
Sorry, Commissioner Eccles, I couldn't hear you.
Jen, did you want to add something to it?
going to say the motion and the second is there, so there's no amending the amended motion.
Right.
We would have to vote on it
Okay,
first,
we have a-
and then if it fails, there can be an additional different motion to amend.
Okay. And there's no discussion. Call for the vote. All those in favor, sign by raising your right hand. All those opposed, sign by raising your right hand. Okay, it fails 2 to 3. And we're back to square one.
Can you change language back to the previous slide? Yeah.
Right now, either way.
95% based on tax value from the appraisal district, 10%, and you can do the lower of the two. I make a motion to amend item number 6 to the following.
I second that motion.
Okay, so if I understand it correctly, you have it kind of as it's written here on the screen now, and then it's both of those or the lower of the two? Did I understand you correctly?
Either of those.
Either of those?
So the lower of the two is either of those, right?
Okay.
So the lowest of either one of them. And then adding, based on latest tax value from the appraisal district or other means, other disclosable means of valuation. Closing documents, legal language to be defined at a later date.
I was going to say other valuation determination acceptable by city staff. So this is set, and if somebody comes in with a napkin saying, I bought this, and they're scribbled on a napkin, city staff might not choose to accept that, but if they have some sort of document that it determines to be valid and legal, we would accept that.
Lawrence, you okay with what I've got on screen? I know we enjoy writing things, while in meetings, but try to accommodate.
Instead of saying determined, I'd say accepted by staff. Yeah. So as time comes, when it comes to city council, odds are pretty good that we'll look at things that we would find more acceptable for that rewrite. But for the purposes of the recommendation, I think it moves the ball. So if I heard it correctly, Commissioner Haskins made the motion, Commissioner Ordinance seconded it. And unless there's discussion, we're looking for a vote on that as well.
Okay. All those in favor, sign by raising your right hand. All those opposed?
Okay, so I guess I would ask, what is it? Is it because we've got the lesser of the two, and is it the percentages, or, I mean, because.
I'm actually fine with just A. I don't feel like I need.
So members, please make sure to turn your mics on.
Yeah. So our thought was, we don't like, and this was somewhat initiated through conversation, we don't like the development's value. That's an arbitrary number that we cannot verify. City should not and most likely cannot verify that. It's a non-verifiable number. So
They've been doing it.
right, but we've been accepting it. Whereas the tax value is the tax value is the tax value. It is what it is. It doesn't change. All we're saying is move to something that's verifiable. That's it. And if we don't like the percentages, I think we got shown a slide that by using the current percentages, it was actually a lower dollar amount that the developer would be paying for the same lot of land.
Right. And that's even with the
$200.
So we raised it by 100 and they were still saving.
Commissioner Orno, please make sure your mic's on.
By looking at that current, if y'all can get us that slide back up, that example that was given to us, even with the new fee that we're increasing it from 200 to 300, and if we charge them the 95% by the tax evaluation, the builder was actually having to pay the city less fees than they were if we were keeping it at what it
Under the current
is
policy.
currently at.
I think my concern with the 95% is I'm just thinking about the small mom and small business. As a small business owner, that would be it'd be a lot of money, no matter even the 95% tax value cap. But remind me again, how large is this tract?
Give me just 1 second.
I'm just thinking in a construction budget, it seems 424,000 is a lot of money. I don't know what they would put here because I don't know the size of the tract, but it just seems like it's going to be a huge expense for small business owners. Certainly, that's not the case for the Home Depots and the Office Depots and the main events or the big fancy schools down the road, but my concern is just strictly for the small business owners.
I absolutely understand
mean,
and commiserate that, and even to his point, they're still coming in and paying it. I mean, no one's looked at the issue and scoffed because they've come in and paid it. Oh, I agree with you. I do, and I don't want to disadvantage anyone from developing in Pearland if the parcel is economically developable, right? Meeting zoning and all of the other appropriateness. But no one's scoffing at the current issue or the current methodology, and we're showing one that would actually save them money.
Okay, Trey, that's what we're being told, that nobody is balking on it. I've gotten phone calls. Yes, people do balk on. Gotten a phone call from a business owner that owns the property now, and he's wanting to do some redevelopment on his property. And when he had his property many years ago doing another type of business, he planted trees for shade. Now the trees, he don't need them anymore. And he is having to mitigate trees he planted, trees he owns on his commercial property that he now has to pay a mitigation fee of the value of that property, which is a developed property. It's not an undeveloped property. And I'm saying we're giving too much leeway because he has his property probably valued $3 million on a business road in our city, and we want to say it's fair for him to have to pay to mitigate trees that he planted for one purpose and he don't have that purpose now. I mean, that's why if we want to do the mitigation, I don't have a problem with whatever the values are. I don't have a problem with the percentages. I would just like to see a cap, as well as if the same owner that had it, that planted the trees, that don't need it now, he gets some type of credit that he doesn't have to pay for taking down trees that he no longer needs. So that's where I'm just in disagreement. I mean, lower the percentages, put a cap on it, and a hard cap for any development, and I'm okay with it. I mean, the tree mitigation is not to bring tax money into the city. It's to make sure we keep our canopy, and I'm okay with that. Jennifer, you're right. Mom and pops, they're not going to be.
At the end of the day, whatever we recommend, city council can still change it to whatever, right? I mean, they're not bound by anything.
Yes, ma'am. It's not, it's a majority vote for city council regardless of what y'all say here. If they wanted to go in a different direction from you altogether, if y'all wanted to pass on this item and go for the other 5, there might be some council members who would say, I wish you would have said what you wanted on 6. But that's an option. Or you could say no cap at all. That's an option. instead of
Can we
passing
just
on it.
give them the one that's present now, the mix, what we recommend and what they recommend, and they have more than one option? Multiple options?
It's a recommendation, and if your recommendation wanted to say give to council these 4 options, yes, ma'am, we could do that.
'Cause ultimately, they're gonna vote.
Well, that's just it.
We would get to a majority to present option A, which is as it currently is, option B, which is it currently
Go back
is,
and revote.
and then add an option C, which would have been the first failed motion, and then add an option D, which would have been the second failed motion, and to present all 4 of those as options for number 6 to city council.
So
don't know if
They
it's-
might pick somewhere in the middle.
yes. So what would y'all's middle ground be on those percentages?
No, that's not what they're saying. They're saying.
No, I know, but I'm asking that question because it was 25, 95. I mean, y'all say y'all don't like the percentages. Okay, what do you like? I mean, there's
I think just whatever he had, so he can present what's there currently, the 95 and 10, and then option C would be
It was 20 and 2.
20% of the site's tax value, and I think it was 2%. Yes, that.
Okay.
So it'll be all of it. They could just pick whichever
A,
one.
B, C, and D.
Right. Yeah. And if they want to go with the lower of, then I mean they're gonna hear our transcript, so.
This doesn't have.
I
Yeah,
think
he'll
that's the
have to
only
add
way
the
they're
numbers
going to
back
get
in.
to pass a vote is to add the other 2.
I make a motion to.
I don't think you got to make a motion to add them, do you?
Yeah, no, we have to.
We are. We
Yes,
have
sir.
to amend that. Okay.
I make a motion to add all 4 as an or.
So you're going to present to city council on number 6 a slate of options A through D,
Yes.
A and B being as they were originally presented to you, C being a 20% tax value, 2% development value, or the lower of the 2, and option D being a combination of A and B, but the lower of the 2.
Correct.
I second that.
Does anybody want to add a? It's too late now, so.
I had the Commissioner Haskins with the motion, Commissioner Ordino with the second. So it's either additional discussion or a vote.
Okay. Okay. Call for the vote. All those in favor, sign by raising your right hand. All those opposed? Carries 4-1. Okay, we finally got a vote on it. All right, that brings us to discussion items, city council update report.
Got so caught up in typing there. Hold on. So let's see. Really and truly, the last update that I have for y'all was from the September 23rd meeting. That was where the property off of Glenview Drive received the R3 zoning district for that property that was recently annexed. That was passed in council's consent agenda. And then the big news out of September 23rd was the approval of the contract for the update to the UDC. So for those of you who haven't checked out that city council item, it is resolution 2024-182, and that provides some general info from Design Workshop, who y'all will get to meet shortly through both conversations as a part of the steering committee, and then as y'all advise on technical issues throughout each of the chapters in the Unified Development Code. Other than that, that's all that council had from the last city council meeting.
Okay, thank you, Martin. We have a city council and P&Z joint workshop on October the 14th. Is there anybody that knows they can't be there on the 14th? Okay. And our next P&Z meeting is October the 21st. Is there anybody that knows they can't be there for it? I cannot be there for it. I'm going to be in Dallas.
Chair, we did have one other item on there. So we have the planning and zoning calendars. Those are for 2025. So just saying that out loud, as I think we kind of skipped to, maybe it was said, and I'm often, okay, cool. We do have those out available for y'all.
Okay.
We will get those populated on your calendar.
Okay. Okay, everybody else can be here? Because I will not be here on the 21st. I'll be in Dallas, Texas.
Daryl, I am flying in from Sacramento on the 21st.
Okay.
And I'm supposed to land at 1 o'clock. But if there's a problem with the airline, I possibly won't be here. But
Okay.
right now, I can be here if the flight's on time.
Okay.
I should be here.
Okay. Being at that, we adjourn this meeting at 7:54.